Welcome to Spotlight Sessions, where we shine
What's
a light
your
on
story?
incredible. What does accessibility mean to you?
What's your mission?
Right in, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Hello, and welcome to another episode of accessiBe's Spotlight Sessions. I'm your host for today's episode. My name is Sapir, and I head up accessiBe's nonprofit partnership team. accessiBe's Spotlight Sessions is an opportunity to highlight leaders and organizations in the disability community, and we're really excited to have our guest today, Dr. Amo Raju. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me on the podcast.
Thank you. So let's jump right in, and can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, my favorite subject, me. Let's see. I'm a disabled person in my mid-50s. I have a condition called cerebral palsy diplegia, which affects my right side. I'm a married man with 3 grown-up children and 2 grandchildren, a third one on the way actually, and by day, I am the CEO of a charity called Disability Direct, which does a number of wonderful projects. I won't go into them, there's so many, but we're a number of support services for disabled people at a local level and national. I'm also the author of a book called Walk Like a Man, which I think we'll probably talk about later on, but that covers my life story as a disabled person and the challenges and the relationship I had with depression and the wider world, and how it reacts to my disability and how I react to the wider world. What else am I? I am also just recently become the deputy to the Lord Lieutenant of Derbyshire, and which is great because I'll be indirectly working for His Majesty the King, King Charles III, which is a great little new kind of chapter in my life. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yes, congratulations on all of your success in your family and professionally. And you have quite an amazing life story. So can you tell us a little bit about how you came to be the CEO of Disability Direct?
Yeah, so I left school with little to no qualifications, and after a brief 7 to 8 year stint in the Bhangra music industry, I found myself needing a day job because I suddenly had a wife and 3 small children to feed and no income. So I realized I've got to start at the bottom of the ladder in terms of a career. And a brand new charity had just opened its doors, literally just opened its doors, and an advisor said to me, "You should go and volunteer for that charity." And I thought, well, voluntary work, me, I need money. But then at the same time, I realized I've got no skills to offer an employer. And being a disabled person back in the 90s, you had to be exceptional for an employer to take you on as a disabled person because you were a risk to them. So working for this disability, I joined this disability charity in 1994. And the then CEO, a chap called Richard Shaw, who sadly passed away last year, he saw something in me, and he, in so many words, he says, "I can see an anger, an awkwardness, and a frustration in you, which you need to channel and use that for the benefit of others." And he said that to me as I was walking out on my first tour, because I had, in my mind, decided I'm not coming back here. This isn't for me. Once he'd said that to me, I realized, you know what, I've got nothing to lose. Anyway, to cut a long story short, within 3 years, I became the CEO because he left for ill health. And I ended up growing the organization to where it is today. I still am the CEO. We are spread across 4 companies now with about 70 staff and doing a number of projects. Don't ask me to name them because I'll forget them in my old age. But we're one of the most successful charities, and this is all self-taught. I had, as I said earlier, no qualifications. I made a few mistakes along the way, but today the charity is in a fantastic position and to be able to do what it wants to do without. It's 97% self-sufficient, which is great. As a charity, we don't rely on grants and donations. They're great when they come in, but we can function without them, and that's a great thing. great position to be in. Um, shall I go on?
You can, but I mean, it's incredible because you have such a wealth of information to share. And so I'm really excited that we can share this with our community. You hit one point that I think is really interesting because you mentioned that in the 90s, you had to be exceptional for an employer to want to hire you. But what do you think people should know about people with disabilities that can maybe help them get hired today?
Well, see, I've just literally before we started was writing an article around the the fact that disabled people have to work at 150% capacity just to prove to the outside world what we are capable of, and just to shine that little bit brighter when we're going for jobs, and that is unfortunate. That was the case in the 90s, and it still is today. That disabled people, employers can look at a disabled person and say, oh gosh, that person's a risk. Oh, they're going to be an extra demand on me. I'm going to have to put in all these facilities to make sure that they are comfortable. It's too much work. I'm just interested in making a profit. Why do I have to do all this? So, and that becomes a challenge for the disabled person. As I say, they have to shine that little bit brighter just to get on the radar of these employers. So you can have an outstanding CV, you can have an outstanding degree or qualification in what you've got, but sometimes the fear, that the indirect prejudice that that employer will have, it's not. I don't think it's intentional. There's very few employers that will say, "I don't like disabled people." It's more of a fear of, oh gosh, how am I going to support them? How are they going to fit into my team? And that becomes a barrier, an additional barrier that that disabled person, an obstacle that that person has to come. So I'm, what I'm trying to do now is, my board of trustees has said to me in so many words that, Amo, you've done the great work for the charity. Now go out there and spread the word, show what can be achieved, so the next generation of disabled people are able to see role models. Now, when I was in the 90s, and even growing up as a teenager and a young adult, I didn't have role models as disabled people. You didn't see us in the media. You didn't see us with our on TV or on a soap opera. We weren't visible. We were locked away. So I didn't have anyone to. I didn't have a template to run to. So I'm what I'm hoping to do now is as many other disabled people are now. That thanks to social media, we are very very visible, and the more we shout about what can be achieved, the less those employers that we've just talked about, the less that they have to fear of, if you know what I mean. They shouldn't really fear
Yeah.
what is what an impairment is going to do to their organization. They should be thinking. I've always talked about what's called the purple pound, or the purple dollar, or whatever you want to call it internationally. The spending power of disabled people is in the billions. If you have disabled people in your workforce, you are going to attract disabled customers. 15% of the world is a disabled person or disabled people. We compromise 15% of the world. That's not a figure you can ignore in terms of your workforce or your customer and your desired customer base. So you really need to kind of start thinking about a bit wider and go beyond your fears. And the more you're going to do that, the only way you're going to do that is to talk to disabled people and get disabled people shouting about what can be achieved. So that's my kind of mission at the moment.
I completely agree with you, and thank you for sharing that. There's a huge cost to not being inclusive of everyone, and we need to channel all of that into inviting people with disabilities and others to the conversation, opening it up so everyone can be part, especially when it comes to workforce challenges, especially when it comes to making businesses better, more profitable, stronger. So thank you for all of your work that you're doing there.
That's not a problem. Well, like I say, is today I have got about five or six next generation leaders of disabled people who I mentor, and we have weekly or monthly sessions where they're just offloading, and
Mhm.
and it's interesting to note. I've actually said to literally every single one of them, you don't really need me. You don't need me to mentor you because the talent is there. I think they just like the fact that there is somebody who's been through it,
Yeah.
and they can just bounce off. And so, the more that there are people out there, just I'm seeing a lot of social media influencers, and I'll be honest with you, before in my naivety, I was a little against these people. I thought you're influencing without experience.
Hmm.
But I now see them as a bonus to the cause, in that
Hmm.
they are showing, look what I can do. Look at what I'm all about. I'm loud and I'm proud and I'm a disabled person. Talk to me. So I'm really all for them.
Hmm.
Even I've got a TikTok account now.
Oh, good. Then I'll have to follow it. We love the power of mentorship here, and our community relations manager, Josh Basil, he also is a big advocate of both being a mentee and a mentor. So we definitely can get you two connected and talk about mentorship. And I'd love to be the mentee in that situation.
Not a problem.
Okay, so my next question for you is this: when you hear the word accessibility, what comes to mind for you?
Yeah, there's this instant thing around accessibility. The world seems to stick a ramp in somewhere or make doors wider. That's ticked a box. For me, accessibility is about attitude, and that if you change the attitude of people in the building becomes more accessible than the installation of a ramp. And that is something that I think gets ignored and often overlooked. I've said this before, you can spend hundreds of thousands of pounds or dollars on adapting a building, but you've wasted every single penny if the person who sits at reception has got a bad attitude towards disability, or a negative or ignorant attitude. So, we need to think about accessibility in its widest form. So, you can have an accessible website, but if the content of the website is ignorant, then what's the point of making it accessible? You've got to have it's the education of the masses around. There used to be, they still do talk about the social model of disability, which is important. Uh, I don't get hung up about terminology, if I'm entirely honest with you, whether people are politically correct. And I just want a conversation. What they're saying, how they're saying it is irrelevant. It's the content of what they're saying is more important to me. Are they sincere in what they're trying to say? We can correct them and say, okay, you don't say that word, you say this word instead, and they'll probably remember that. But what is more important and harder for them to remember is that disabled person is just as powerful and equal as I am. That's harder to get to them. So accessibility to me is about changing attitude.
That was lovely. Thank you so much. How does that come through in the book that you wrote, Walk Like a Man?
So this book is, as I say, it's captured my own story of being a child. One of the things I didn't mention in the beginning is I had secret therapy sessions for 30 years. So secret that my wife and children and my parents, nobody knew. Not a single soul knew that I was having therapy, because therapy in the UK where I live is just a negative, it's a taboo word. It's not the norm. So I was doing it, and as a male, as a man, my testosterone levels were going out the window every time I thought about therapy. I thought, what will everybody think? I'm the provider, I am the leader, and if everybody finds I am weak because I go to therapy, I won't be thought about positively. So I never told anyone. Anyway, during lockdown, I decided to capture my story in this book, Walk Like a Man, if everybody can see it. And it's based on 30 years of conversations with the counselor, the therapist. Um, and the protagonist, AJ, his name, he's based on me, talks to the therapist over 3 decades. And each time the conversation switches to that scene of whatever is bothering him at the moment, and then she'll get him to go into his past, and he'll recount episodes of and instances of things that affected him psychologically. And I can assure you, everything that happened to this character happened to me. Some of them are quite hard to believe, but everybody who knows me will say, "Gosh, yes, that did happen to him." Um, with the book, it as I said at the beginning, it's my relationship with depression, what I call it, and how I reacted to ignorance and negativity towards me, and then how um, those issues affected me mentally and affected my confidence, affected my ability to cope, and I became very withdrawn. I became very I lacked confidence. My self-esteem levels were on the floor. They just weren't. I could not see a future. When I was 23 to 24, I couldn't see a future as to what role I had in society, apart from being a young father, thinking, well, okay, all I can do is guide my 3 children. I probably won't be able to provide for them, but I'll have to guide my children. But one of the things I've said now, I say now, is that I at some stage there was that eureka moment with me where I said, I now own my disability, my impairment. I own it. It no longer owns me. So Amo Raju has CP. CP doesn't have Amo Raju. And the minute I processed that piece of information, the minute I realized that the world has this attitude, I cannot change the world. It is in the DNA of other people. They are just programmed that way. Their coding is written that way to behave that way. I can't change 6 billion people. What I have to do is learn how I deal with them, and how I react to whatever they're doing, and stay focused on the mission. And for me, the mission is, constantly to shout about being loud and proud of being a disabled person. So the more I do that, the more um, I, I think I'm achieving my mission. And so that's what the book focuses on. The journey that I took to where I am. People say I'm a successful individual today, and I probably am. But once they've realized where I came from, where my roots were, where I started, then I think it's hopefully inspiring. On a weekly basis, I get emails from people who have read the book, people I've never met, from all over um, the UK, and in some instances from outside the UK, of people who have said, I went through that. Gosh, what you wrote in that particular chapter, I'm going through that now. And whilst that it gives me kind of assurance that I wrote the right story down, it also makes me sad. Makes me sad that the world hasn't changed. This book is based on 30 years of experiences, of thoughts and processes, and you'd think the world would have progressed 30 years later, and it hasn't. And that's where I think there needs to be more books around people's journeys. And I always say to everybody, every person, whether you're disabled or not, whatever you're going through in life, you've got a book inside you. You've got a story to tell. When you starting your journey, you'll realize, hang on, that was interesting. That was interesting. Okay, I just went through it and I was too busy going through it. I didn't find it fascinating. But now I look back and think, oh, that might be of interest to other people. And it's only when I did that, when I brought in the co-author, Manny, she helped me, because I was on a weekly basis in lockdown having sessions like this. And she said, Amo, tell me what happened. And it became like a therapy session almost again, because I was telling her this happened, that happened, and she said I could see her scratching her head, saying sometimes, thinking, did that really happen? Is that true? And I said, look, it really did. It did. And and people who have, some of the people I've had to reinvent their names in the book, because I didn't want to. Most of the people who are in the book, their names have been changed. When they read it, they go, "That's me, isn't it?" I said, "Yeah, it is." Oh. And they smile and giggle, and they say, "Well, we're pleased you captured that in the right way." So yeah, as I say, the book's about getting the message out, and I'm really pleased because it became an instant success. on Amazon, and people are everywhere I go now. I keep getting asked for books, so I take when I'm doing presentations, I take a box of books and I sign it, and people and a lot of, a lot of people are enjoying it, which gives me immense pleasure.
Thank you so much for sharing, because it seems like a very relatable book, and to me it feels like, oh, if I want another mentorship session with you, I should probably order in and read that book.
Well, it's yeah, as I say, people are finding it. A lot of people are just sending me, messages, DMing me through Instagram, saying, "Great book, thank you," and I'll give them a thumbs up. They clearly don't want a conversation, and that's fine. Whereas some people are sending me lengthy emails about how the book affected them, and that's also nice as well. So and that's, and I think the book was needed. Um, I'm of South Asian descent, so my parents are from India originally, and the book has resonated a lot with some people, disabled people from South Asian descent, who have said, "You're right. Mental health means nothing in the South Asian community. It means nothing in the non-South Asian community, to be honest with you. Some people just still haven't quite got to grips with how to deal with it. But if you look at the Indian languages, there's no such word for depression. It's just not. They just don't think about it. I was
Interesting.
talking to my wife about menopause, and we were looking at in India that the women don't have a word for menopause. They just
Wow.
because those kind of conditions, they just look at you like there's nothing wrong with you. Belt up, sit up straight. There's nothing wrong with you. Just get on with it, crack on. And that's unfortunate. Whereas the rest of the world seems to have acknowledged that these conditions exist and something needs to be done about them. Some communities are still kind of getting to grips with, well, we haven't even got a word for it. Um,
Mhm.
so
Yeah,
there's work to be done.
absolutely. Anything related to mental health or an invisible disability doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. It just means that we need to be better at supporting our communities, hearing them out if they need to speak, and giving them the opportunity to do so. But that's my take. So I'm interested. Last question for you today.
Okay.
If everyone can do one bit to make the world more inclusive, a better place, what would that be?
I think the thing I always say to everybody is that there's lots of things you could be doing, but one thing that's on my mind at the moment is talk to disabled people. Disabled community does not exist for itself. You need to, if you see a disabled person and you want to talk to them, talk to them. And if you want to ask them about their impairment, 9 times out of 10 people won't be offended. You don't say what's wrong with you. That's the wrong way to do it. Say, how's this impairment affecting you? And what is it? I need to learn more. Because one thing I say to everybody is disability is one of those things. It affects 15% of the world, but the remaining 85% will also be affected at some stage in their life, whether it's
Mhm.
directly or whether it's through a loved one. As we get older, you lose hearing, you lose a bit of sight, you get creaky bones and stuff, and you suddenly start to appreciate what that 15% has been going through all their life as you get older. So disability is going to affect everyone in the world. You cannot run from it. You cannot hide from it. And the only way you're going to learn about it and make the world a better place is to talk to disabled people, because we're ready to talk. We are now confident enough to say we are disabled and this is what's bothering us. And this is what you, the 85%, can do to make the world a better place with us, not for us, but with us.
Amazing message. I'm so grateful that we had you as a guest today. Thank you, Amo.
No problem. Thank you.
And to all of our listeners, thank you for listening to this episode. It was wonderful. So we're glad that you stayed on. You can also continue the conversation with us by liking and subscribing to this channel on YouTube, and also following us on Instagram at accessiBe_community. We'll see you there.